Hello, everybody. This is Empowering Democracy. I'm your host, Joe Firestone, and I'm being joined tonight by my good friend, Dee Pierce, who's the host of Around the World with Dee and Friends.
I'm very happy to be here.
Oh, thank you, Dee. I'm very happy you are here. And so today we're going to discuss the war, the Israel Iran uh, uh, war. Uh, and we're going to more specifically discuss the ongoing mutual destruction from the war, and the reactions of a number of people to the war. And we're going to start off with actually sharing things on Facebook.
And I see Earl of Lurl is here. How you doing, Earl?
The Earl of Lurl. Okay. Hello, Earl. Is he the only one here? Because it looked like there were 14, 15 people here.
You're probably getting people from X.
Yes. Yeah, it was really weird yesterday. On Tuesday, I got 761 views on Facebook, which was, I thought, strange.
Well, today I hit 20,000 followers. So then I had 19,000 followers. So you don't know out of the people that could have, stopped in and viewed it being on my wall.
Oh, so you mean Facebook has been strange lately?
It's not that it's strange, just that I've got a lot of followers, people that are visiting my page. So they could be, looking at your show too,
Okay,
or, or even watching parts of it.
okay, that's great. Okay, so let's get started with the first of our reactions. That is from Larry Johnson,
Okay.
the ex CIA vet, who is now very active, intelligence veteran. Oh, wait, sorry, I got the wrong thing going on here.
Okay.
I will shut that down. Okay. Sorry, folks. Inadvertently turned on something, but what I am sharing now is an article by Larry Johnson, which appeared on the 13th of June on his blog Sonar 21.
Okay. Oh, hello, Evelina. Evelina's here.
Good. Hi, Evelina. And the title of it is The Silver Lining in the Dark War Cloud over Iran. And of course, I was very interested in finding out what the silver lining was. I'm still
Mm-hmm.
not sure I know. Here's a Google picture, I guess, of the Isfahan Nuclear Technology Center, which I guess received a bit of bombing from the Israelis on that first night. Mari says Israel's unjustified and unprovoked attack on Iran early Friday morning marks the full on start of a war that is likely to change the face of the regions. I mince no words. This is war. But there is a silver lining of sorts with Israel having to use its air squadrons to launch repeated attacks on Iran and to scramble fighters into the air to try to stop the Iranian drones and missiles. The Palestinians in Gaza will get a respite from daily bombings. Yeah, I guess they will, because the real Israelis have all they can handle in the air right now. So, what is happening? Israel's initial strike included the use of trailer truck drones, the same tactic that, quote, Ukraine, unquote, and Ukraine is in scare quotes there. The implication being that it wasn't really Ukraine alone that did that attack on June 1st. But anyway, continuing, used on June 1st against Russia's strategic air assets. Israel appears to have had more success than the Ukrainians because the Zionist drones carried out some successful assassinations of senior um, Iranian military leaders and some prominent nuclear scientists. If you think that Israel came up with this idea on its own, you are deluding yourself. Well, we don't want to be deluding ourselves, Dee, right? We still do not have a clear picture of how much damage the Israeli bombs, air-launched missiles inflicted across Iran, but the attack was significant in its scale and scope. That said, it did not cripple Iran's ability to strike back, which it did late on Friday and early Saturday Jerusalem time. Iran also did some significant damage to Israel, reportedly striking Israel's military headquarters building in Tel Aviv and successfully hitting uh, um, 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 three of the military airfields. Of course, since then, there have been reports of much greater damage. First of all, Tel Aviv appears to be devastated in large part. And recently, there have been attacks on the oil refineries, in Haifa by Iran, very, very successful attacks. These replied to an attack by the Israelis on the natural gas fields, of the Iranians. So Iran hit back directly and rather devastatingly. In the world of so-called international rules-based order, and I'm continuing now with the article, Israel is guilty of an unprovoked attack, and Iran, in accordance with Chapter 7, Article 51 of the UN Charter, is retaliating appropriately. Yet the West is condemning Iran and gaslighting the public regarding Israel's claim that this was an act of self-defense. And Larry says, bollocks. I believe it was bollocks too. I believe, he says, that Israel's attack was part of a planned international intelligence and military operation, which included the participation and support of the United States, the United Kingdom, France, and Germany. We got the first clue on May 31st when a UN watchdog issued 2 reports designed to create a narrative that Iran is a rogue nuclear state. A report issued by the International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA, and sent to member states on Saturday said Iran's stock of uranium enriched up to 60% purity had grown by roughly half to 408.6 kilograms. That is enough uranium, if enriched to the 90% of purity level, for 9 nuclear weapons, according to an IAEA estimate. The second report claims that Iran carried out secret nuclear activities with material not declared to the UN nuclear watchdog at 3 locations decades ago. Excuse me. The findings in the quote comprehensive unquote IAEA report quote pave the way for a push by the United States, Britain, France, and Germany for the board to declare Iran in violation of its non-proliferation obligations, unquote. Uh, that was a quote from Reuters. Using the report's findings, the four Western powers plan to pressure the IAEA to declare that Iran is in non-compliance with its obligations under the nuclear non-proliferation treaty, the NPT, at its next meeting in June, diplomats said to the news agency. Well, I think the United States has been in non-compliance with its obligations under the NPT when it broke the treaty with Iran in the first place, in the first Trump administration. That just seems to me that's got to be considered non-compliance with its obligations under the NPT. Anyway, this tactic was employed in 2002/2003 to gin up a justification to attack Iraq, who the U.S. insisted had weapons of mass destruction. We now know it was a lie, but the propaganda was effective in producing support in the United States and Europe to invade Iraq. We're seeing a similar effort today, only this time Iran is being falsely accused of enriching uranium to build a bomb. The Iraq WMD lie, like the current calumny against Iran, only has one purpose: to justify us um, uh, 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 military action in order to achieve regime change. As was the case with Ukraine's failed attack on Russian strategic assets on June 1st, Israel's first swipe at Iran was accompanied by AI-generated videos and images, along with breathless reports of massive, profound damage. While it is true that Israel hit a large number of targets in Iran, the attack failed to cripple Iran's ability to fight back, which is exactly what it did today and will continue to do for the foreseeable future. I think that Iran has an advantage over Israel when it comes to a sustained campaign based on air and missile assets. Iran has more drones and more missiles than Israel. Israel, at least for now, is relying on hitting Iran with its squadrons of F-35s and F-16s. Here's the problem. Israel's air capability will degrade over time as the jet aircraft suffer mechanical failures from extended use, and normal kinds of maintenance. As for the most recent data, 2024 to 2025, the F-35 Lightning II requires about 10 to 14 hours of maintenance for each hour of flight time, depending on the variant and operating conditions. Despite improvements over the past few years, the F-35 still requires significantly more maintenance than legacy fighters like the F-16, which typically needs about 5 to 6 maintenance hours per flight hour. The total flight time from Israel to Iran's border and back is a little more than 3 hours. Do the math. Every F-35 used to attack Iran will be undergoing maintenance for at least 30 hours. I doubt that Israel will be able to sustain its current operations tempo for more than a week. That last paragraph is really an interesting one because it shows that Israel has some weaknesses. If I remember correctly, they have only 50 of the F-35s. So if they're going to need 30 hours, well, obviously they're going to stagger them in order to maintain the bombing campaign. But if they stagger them, then maybe they're only sending over maybe 15 of the F-35s, at a time, um, to Iran, which means it would make it easier for the Iran air defense system to knock them down out of the sky. I should add something here, uh, which I'm not sure is covered in the other stuff we have to go over. In the first of the attacks by Israel, they were very successful, unprecedentedly successful. Their success was not consistent with their lack of success on, during the October 26th raid of 2024. So, what accounts for their greater success now when they should have had far less success, considering that the Iranians have had 7 months to strengthen their air defense? Well, I think it was from Pepe Escobar, but we'll see later, because we're going over an interview we had with Nima. But what he said is that the air defenses were initially not working, okay, at all. And I had wondered at the time whether that was the case, and if so, why? Okay, it was not working. Well, Pepe, if it indeed was him, said that he had heard that the Israelis were successful in breaking into the Iranian communications system. And so when they did, they basically shut it down. That's why the air defense system was not working during that time. But it also was the case that Iran responded very, very quickly to the problem. And they got it fixed in 3 or 4 hours. And then when the Israelis sent over a second wave, they got a big surprise. Uh, okay, and evidently it was a situation where the air defense came online, only gradually. Okay, but after a few more hours, it was totally in place again. And so the expectation at that time was that the Israelis were going to be increasingly unsuccessful uh, in their plane-based campaign, continuing over the next week or so, if they're able to spend the whole week, okay, in doing it, because they might have the maintenance programs Larry Johnson's talking about here. Anyway, going on with the article, Iran, on the other hand, has a clear advantage when it comes to ballistic missiles and drones. One tactic that Iran may employ is to fire older missiles and drones in the first or second wave attack in order to deplete Israel's air defense system. Iran can then follow up with launches of hypersonic missiles.
Oh, never.
If Russia, China, or North Korea decided to resupply Iran, then Israel's ability to fend off future attacks will deteriorate. Now, I have a couple of comments to say here. First of all, the ability of Israel to fend off attacks was not too successful even from the first or second wave attacks. But on Friday, it appeared, okay, that Iran sent 6 waves of missiles to Israel. And I saw an item today, I saw a video today, I think it was from the Times of India, that claimed that over the first 2 days that Israel had sent uh, uh, a total of 2,000 missiles, and I don't know how many drones, to Israel. And Iran was becoming increasingly successful with its waves as time uh, went on Friday and also Saturday. Iran uh, can then follow up with launches of hypersonic missiles, says Larry. If Russia, China, and North Korea decide to resupply Iran, then Israel's ability to fend off future attacks is going to deteriorate. Russia, according to Boris Zikman, has issued a stern warning to the Trump administration. Details of the warning are included in uh, um, 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 the following uh, video. So, I'm not going to play the video, but I will continue with the article. The Zionists are in a bind militarily because their defense assets are already stretched to the breaking point. Israel lacks the strategic depth to sustain robust operations in Gaza, the West Bank, the southern part of Lebanon, and Syria, while trying to continue launching air attacks, uh, air assaults on, 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 on the air assaults on Iraq. I discussed the war on Iran with Nima, Judge Napolitano, and J.O. Uh, um, uh, Jayat's uh, Simon, I think that's how you pronounce it, in 3 separate interviews today, and he leaves links to the 3 separate interviews. I'm sure they were all very good, but we don't have time to go over them. So let's take a first look at your comments.
Okay.
You also have 125 folks here, so a lot of people tuned in. That's wonderful.
Yes, it is. And Catherine's here.
Yeah. Hi, Catherine Lewandowski. Great to see you back. She's driving home from Everett's No King's Day protest. I'll bet that was a good one. I'll bet that was a really good one, Catherine.
Yes, all over. There have been
It's,
no King's protests.
it seems like the No King's protests have gone off very well with a minimum of violence
Yes.
and very little violence from the administration, if any, also. If that's true, then that is really wonderful news. I was hoping there weren't going to be any pitched battles today,
Yeah.
and I guess they were not. So let us go on with the second of our pieces here.
Okay.
That will be yours, Dee.
Alrighty.
And that's a plum from Scott Ritter.
Okay. Okay. Scott Ritter. Quote, Lion's Courage versus, quote, True Promise 3.
I guess I have a comment about that. I'm not sure about the courage of the lion here.
The lion's off in Greece, in a
Oh, you
bunker in Greece.
caught my reference completely there. I was about to mention the lion flew to Greece.
Yeah.
Actually, before the Iranian missiles began to arrive. And as far as we know, he is not back in Israel.
No, he's not. He abandoned the people and he told them, stay in their bunkers and everything. And meanwhile, he takes off. What kind of leader is that?
We know what kind of leader that is.
Right.
He didn't even have the courage of Joe Stalin in the
Right.
war.
Mm-hmm.
Israel, oh, I'm sorry. Go on.
Yes, and it was on X. You saw a different post. People posting with Yawa Sinwar, how he stayed and fought to the end.
Yes. Yeah, not old BB.
No.
He wants to end his life in bed. Well, in any case,
Here we go. Israel attacked Iran using disarmament of Iran's nuclear program as an excuse. But this attack isn't about enrichment, it's about regime change. And there can only be one winner. And June 12th, 2025, it was
Scott
written.
uh, uh, Scott is implying there that the one winner might not be Israel; it might be Iran.
Right. And it looks like it's going that way.
It now looks like it's beginning to go that way, right? And there is a picture. I don't know what it's a picture of. It might be Tehran under Israeli attack.
Or could it does look like a photo that I've seen. Okay, it says there Tehran under Israeli attack June 13th, 2025. But the pictures are so similar because there was pictures with with in Israel, so but if he's referencing Iran, I mean it could be either or, when you look at the pictures.
Yes, it can. Please go on.
Okay, Tehran under Israeli attack June 13th, 2025. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has announced the commencement of Operation Lion's Courage, the goal of which is to eliminate Iran's nuclear enrichment and weaponization infrastructure. Netanyahu and his senior military commanders have indicated that this operation will take weeks to complete. A key part of the strike appeared to be aimed at decapitating senior Iranian leadership in both the military and military industry who were linked to Iran's nuclear program. Israel claimed that it had in its possession new intelligence which indicated Iran was preparing to bring to fruition a nuclear weapon capability. This intelligence, Israel claims, was behind the decision to strike now, even as the United States was engaged in ongoing negotiations with Iran about how to reduce concerns about the nuclear weapons potential of Iran while enabling uranium enrichment operations to continue.
Okay, I need to make a comment here too. Uh, okay, if the operation is going to take weeks to complete, then we have to call into question the ability of the Israelis to maintain the intensity of their attacks for weeks. Right now, it doesn't look like they can do that.
No, it doesn't.
Doesn't look like the planes are going to stand up to the strain. Uh, and it doesn't look like they have capability in other areas to be able to do it. And it doesn't look like they have the capability to hold out against the missiles of Iran. Okay, of course, it remains to be seen, how many missiles Iran actually has that it can fire. Uh, I remember on the first day uh, after the first attack, Scott Ritter was coming up with estimates. Uh, okay, that I thought I didn't know how he could have these estimates, and I'm not sure he was right. But he seemed to think that the first Israeli attack somehow cut down on 70% of the capability of the Iranians to attack. Okay, now we'll find out if this is true over the coming days, because even if only 30% was less, they could manage the kinds of attacks they've had so far with, only 30% less. But I was under the impression that they had uh, really in the millions of the combination of missiles and drones that they had stocked up over a long period of time. So, in theory, if that's the case, the 2,000 missiles, or maybe 3,000 by now, that they've dispatched so far, is nothing to them. It doesn't even make a dent in their capability unless Scott was right in his early estimates that 70% of their capability was damaged. But I never trusted that estimate, in spite of the fact that Scott is generally, uh, very much on the mark in his various estimates. Okay, please go on.
Okay. More details about what exactly Israel struck in their initial wave of attacks will undoubtedly be forthcoming. Initial reports suggest that, in addition to the decapitation strikes, Israel struck air defense and communications facilities, nuclear enrichment facilities at Natanz and Firdos, ballistic missile production facilities at Parshin, a ballistic missile operation base at Paranchar, and other facilities of a similar nature.
Okay, here I have to comment also. Okay, the facilities at Parchin, uh, uh, back in October, okay, when the Israelis attacked on October 26th, they were going after Parchin then, as well. Okay, and Alistair Crook, who has a lot of inside information, concerning Iran and what's going on there, and he was usually extremely accurate in the facts he puts forward. Uh, Swore up and down that the Iranians had abandoned the Parchin site as a production facility 2 or 3 years ago. Okay, if he's right, then the Israeli attack on Parchin, was obviously misdirected again, because I'm sure
Hmm.
they didn't start up the facility since October. Okay, anyway, please go on.
Iran is its own worst enemy. For the past few months, Iran has been posturing itself as a nuclear threshold state. While Iran has every right as a signatory to the Nuclear Nonproliferation Treaty (NPT) to possess the ability to enrich uranium as part of a peaceful nuclear program monitored by the International Atomic Energy Agency (IAEA). It does not have any legal right to pursue a nuclear weapons capability so long as it remains a signatory to the NPT. Iran's accumulation of uranium enrichment to 60%, for which there was no legitimate purpose linked to Iran's declared nuclear activities, was a deliberate act by Iran to position itself to be within one enrichment cycle of possessing uranium enrichment to around 92%, which would be usable in a fission weapon.
And here are centrifuges and things like that.
Okay. Iranian IR-6 centrifuges. Iran likewise has been installing advanced IR-6 centrifuge cascades, which are orders of magnitude more efficient when it comes to the enrichment of uranium, as its underground enrichment facility at Firdos. These cascades would be able to convert Iran's 60% enriched uranium to weapon-grade uranium within a matter of days, providing Iran with fissile material sufficient for 3 to 5 nuclear weapons.
Right. So you notice I want to say two things about this. First thing is that here's an estimate by Scott of 3 to 5 nuclear weapons, and we already saw the IAEA came out with a statement, saying they had enough of the 60% stuff to get to 9, nuclear weapons. And I've seen other estimates. I don't think anybody knows how much of the material they have, for how many weapons. These estimates, okay, are very gross. Second thing I wanted to say is that it's known that the Israeli attack, the first attack, that one of the places it struck, uh, 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 was it Ferdos?
Hmm.
But it's also known that uh, uh, that particular attack on Ferdos wasn't uh, successful. Uh, okay, in attacking the centrifuges, which were underground. Okay, so that attack, if its purpose was to destroy the centrifuges, seemed to have failed,
Hmm.
according to reports I saw. Please go on.
Okay. Um, Iranian military industry has, over the course of the past decade, mastered all the technologies necessary to produce a warhead possessing advanced electronics and other heat-sensitive properties that can withstand the heat of hypersonic reentry. These warhead design characteristics are an essential part of any viable nuclear weapons delivery capability. Simply producing a fission device is not enough. One must be able to deliver it to the intended target. The one thing which held Iran back was the official decision taken by the Iranian leadership that nuclear weapons were forbidden under existing Islamic jurisprudence, namely a fatwa or edict issued by Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, which deemed nuclear weapons incompatible with the principles of the Islamic Republic of Iran. But Iran has made this principled stance meaningless in recent months as statements from senior Iraqi officials, advisors, and politicians have made it clear that this fatwa prohibiting nuclear weapons could be reversed if the Islamic Republic were to be faced with an existential threat from a nuclear armed Israel. In short, Iran has positioned itself to be a nuclear weapons threshold state, and this would never be allowed to stand. Reality, Israel's ongoing strikes have emphatically punctuated.
Okay, what I have to say about that is that that prophecy is a kind that fulfills itself.
Right.
The more the Israelis are going to attack, uh, um, 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 the Iranians and threaten the very existence of Iran, the more they will be perceived as an existential threat, and the more the Iranians, okay, are likely to get rid of the fatwa and to finalize, the creation, um, of a nuclear weapon. So what the Israelis are doing, if they're really afraid of the nuclear weapons of Iran, is really rather suicidal. In other words, why would they attack them? If they were really afraid of their nuclear weapons.
Hmm.
Uh, okay, okay. I doubt that they're so afraid of them. I think what they want is an excuse to attack Iran, okay, and to get rid of the regime altogether.
That's basically what they want to do.
And that's what they're after.
Right, because Iran is not going to be like Jordan and Egypt, and say the Saudis. They're not going to, and now it's Syria. They're not going to just blindly, let Israel be the leader of the region.
No, they're not. And they're not going to let Israel complete the genocide in Gaza,
Exactly.
which is a key point. Okay, please go on.
What's next? The escalation genie, unfortunately, is out of the bottle. Iran is now in a quote, use it or lose it reality where the nuclear weapon threshold capacity it has acquired will either need to be rapidly converted into a viable nuclear weapons capability or else it will be diminished and or eliminated through the ongoing attrition of Israeli strikes.
I guess I got to make a comment there also, because of course one of the targets, for the Iranian missiles, and a successful target, not just a target, but a target they hit with some success, was the Dimona facility inside of Israel,
Hmm.
close to the port of Eilat, which is where the Israelis uh, create the fissile material they use, okay, for their bombs. Okay, and so the Iranians had gotten some intelligence as to where that was, where that material was, and it was attacking those places, targeting those places. So my point is that the longer this goes on, uh, the more diminished may be the capacity of Israel, to use its own, nuclear weapons, which is a very dangerous kind of situation, because if the Israelis see their capability getting reduced by bombing, then they may be encouraged to escalate, the war to a nuclear war. On the other hand, I think the Israeli attack that they've just made has incentivized, the Iranians to follow through and to finally become a nuclear weapon state rather than a nuclear weapons threshold state. But we'll see. Uh, uh, we know the Israelis are hunting, the Ayatollah Khamenei right now. That they're trying to assassinate him, and they're trying to assassinate also the president of Iran.
Hmm.
And after having the experience of them having to be moved, okay, in order to avoid coming attacks from Israel, that may convince the Ayatollah to get rid of the fatwa. Because I don't know if this is, creating an existential threat for the Iranians, but it's certainly, the Israeli attack is certainly creating an existential threat for the leaders of Iran. And they've already removed in their first attack uh, but quite a few of the leaders of Iran. They were
Hmm.
successful, at least in that. Please go on.
Okay.
Having
Uh, Having promised that it would withdraw from the NPT if its nuclear facilities were attacked, Iran has no choice but to now follow through on this threat. Fail to do so would be seen as an act of surrender by the Iranian regime, something which could serve as the predicate for regime change. The question then is whether Israel's attacks have achieved the requisite level of destruction necessary to prevent Iran from rapidly acquiring nuclear weapons. The key for Israel at this juncture is to provoke Iran into withdrawing from the NPT and beginning the process of acquiring weapons capability. This act by Iran will trigger the United States, which has distanced itself from Israel's initial airstrikes, and Europe, whose major nations, Great Britain, France, and Germany, have articulated that Iran will never be allowed to possess nuclear weapons, to become involved in the military strikes against Iran.
uh, okay, so
Mm,
okay, it seems to me the Iranians are doomed if they do and doomed if they don't. Okay, in the following sense. Okay, if they decide, to get out of the NPT now,
mhm,
that could serve as the predicate, for an escalated regime change campaign where all the nations join in. On the other hand, okay, if they stay in the NPT, then that could also serve as a predicate uh, um, um, for that, because the Israelis, even while the Iranians are in the NPT now, that hasn't stopped them, uh, from going forward with an attack, which is obviously aimed at, uh, changing the regime. So it doesn't matter what the Iranians are going to do. Someone is going to be after them to overturn the leadership they have now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it seems to me the leadership, may as well uh, 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 go forward and get the nuclear weapons. In the past, Scott Ritter has pointed out that he thinks they might be 2 to 3 weeks away. Well, if they're only 2 or 3 weeks away, maybe they should start right now. I also have to point out what's so bad about them, having nuclear weapons. The Israelis already have nuclear weapons, and the fact that the Iranians don't is obviously a destabilizing aspect inside of the Middle East, because the Israelis have always felt free to attack the Iranians because they don't have nuclear weapons. I mean, that's pretty clear.
Yes, that's exactly.
Okay, we have so many states, that have nuclear weapons now. North Korea, Israel, Pakistan, and India, but come to mind, and we've not actually had a nuclear war. And this is especially true because when the nuclear states start to fight, as the Indians and Pakistanis do, they all get excited about stopping the fighting because, they both have the nuclear weapons to destroy the other. So maybe that would work the same way, for Iran. So what's so bad about them, getting nuclear weapons? I mean, I don't understand. Of course, it would be better if no one had nuclear weapons. But with all the states that have them now, France and Britain. Okay, I don't know if Germany has any of its own now, but it's got some American nuclear weapons there for sure. So, I mean, what's the difference if one more state becomes a nuclear state?
Mm-hmm.
I don't see this as increasing by that much, the risk of getting into a nuclear war. I certainly think that the attempts of other nations to stop Iran from getting that capability could actually trigger a nuclear war, because the Russians and Chinese, two of the largest of a nuclear power, are allied with Iran right now, and they may decide to use tactical nuclear weapons against the Israelis to stop them from winning this war, if it comes to that, if Iran is under existential threat. So it almost seems to me that the risk is higher if people are all acting in this way to stop Iran, from getting the nuclear weapons, than it is they simply leave Iran alone. Anyway, that's my view. Please go ahead.
To this, to do this, Israel must delay the Iranian move toward building a bomb. This is done not by destroying the deeply buried enrichment facilities, a task beyond the conventional capabilities of both Israel and the United States, but rather by killing senior leadership and management in Iran's military and military industry upper ranks, and destroying critical infrastructure used by Iran to manufacture the various components essential to the manufacture of a nuclear weapons and its ballistic missile delivery systems. The Natanz Enrichment Facility.
Yep.
The combination of such attacks would logically be designed to sow chaos and uncertainty in an Iranian nuclear weapons program that had, because of the political atmosphere that existed prior to the Israeli attacks, not yet come together as a viable formal entity. Had Israel waited another week, the Iranians would likely have been able to pull the desperate parts of their threshold nuclear weapons program together into a formal structure possessing resilience, redundance, and reliability. It seems that Israel has targeted and killed many of the senior Iranian officials who would have been at the center of the coalescing effort needed to bring a nuclear weapons program to manifestation. Iran will need to regroup from a technical standpoint, even as its leadership creates the political foundation for the existence of a nuclear weapons program to be formally instituted. If Israel achieves the desired results from its strike on Iran, this regrouping will take time, and time is not on Iran's side. Iran has promised a massive retaliation against Israel and any nation which supported an Israeli attack on Iran's nuclear infrastructure.
So just to say something there too, uh, time is not on their side, perhaps with respect to regrouping of the capability to, get a nuclear weapon in 2 weeks or 3 weeks or something like.
Hmm.
But uh, it's also true that time is not, uh, on the Israeli side when it comes to the Israelis surviving continuous attacks on their economy, on their industrial capability, and on their military capability, from the missiles that Iran is supposed to have. If they have the quantities of missiles they're supposed to have, they're going to be able to continue attacks on Israel. The Iranians will, for much longer than just a week, maybe 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks, but for a longer time than the Israelis will be able to resist. They're taking terrific damage right now, even as we speak. Okay, and I don't know if they can sustain that damage as well, because they've already been drained by their efforts at genocide, okay, in Gaza. There's been a military cost for that, and there's been a military cost on them uh, uh, from the Houthi interventions inside of Israel over some period of time, and a devastating effect on the economy of Israel, also
Hmm.
Houthi attacks. So Israel, okay, is in a weakened state, okay, and everybody knows that. And whether it can withstand 2 or 3 weeks of strikes from the Iranians, okay, or even more time. In other words, time isn't on their side. The longer the attacks go on, the more vulnerable the Israelis become. Okay, and that gets even more. Uh, that particular vulnerability gets even greater when you consider the military facts involved. Uh, okay, we'll see somebody talking about that. Just a little. Actually, it'll be Scott. He's talking about that, but uh, to make a successful attack on one missile, okay, of the Iranians, okay, it turns out that there could be as many as 12, okay, of the anti-ballistic missiles necessary to bring down a single hypersonic missile. Okay, and the Israelis don't have the necessary supply, of the anti-missile missiles, and the United States is very strained in its production of those things because it's been using them in the Ukraine context also. Okay, and previous attacks, we're very short of those kinds. Okay, of missiles. I'm talking about, the missiles for the Patriots, uh, the attacker missiles, but just the whole range of missiles we have. There's been a production problem with respect to those missiles. And I don't know how long the United States will be able to resupply the Israelis. All their anti missile systems, the Iron Dome, David Sling, the Arrow 1, the Arrow 2, the American anti missile systems, uh, the missiles that actually are the components of those systems are in short supply. And they are even so right now. And the more the Iranians attack them with their missiles, the more they are likely to run out. In other words, that's another war of attrition which is going to happen. And time is not on the Israeli side in that war of attrition. Please go on.
Okay. If Israel achieved the desired results from its strike on Iran, this regrouping will take time, and time is not on Iran's side. Iran has promised a massive retaliation against Israel and any nation which supported an Israeli attack on Iran's nuclear infrastructure.
Yeah.
The Iranian missile launch is true promise to October 2nd of 2024. If Iran fails to launch such an attack, for whatever reason, lack of capacity, lack of political will, or both, then it creates a window of opportunity for diplomacy to rear its ugly head and impose a ceasefire which locks in Israeli gain while opening Iran up to international inspections of both its nuclear enrichment and ballistic missile production infrastructure. In short, a huge Israeli victory and devastating Iranian defeat.
Right. However, it's already the case, of course, that the Iranians came in with True Promise 3. In other words, they finally released that, okay, and, have used it against Israel. That is what is going on now.
Mhm.
And so there isn't a window of opportunity for diplomacy right now to rear its ugly head. Okay, please go on.
If Iran does seek to finalize a nuclear weapons program, then it invites participation by both the United States and Europe, and this may have been the Israeli objective all along. Moreover, while President Trump and Secretary of State Marco Rubio have tried to distance themselves from this act of Israeli military aggression, there are elements within the Trump administration and the U.S. Congress, Senator Lindsey Graham for one, that are openly supportive of the Israeli actions against Iran. The fact of the matter is that the United States has provided Israel with tacit permission to strike Iran, both in terms of helping shape the geopolitical reality necessary to deem the Israeli action reasonable, uniting the Gulf Arab nations in the face of perceived Iranian aggression, and getting the IAEA Board of Governors to pass a resolution accusing Iran of violating its safeguard obligations under the NPT, and buying Israel time to perfect its target deck by engaging Iran in nuclear negotiations. These negotiations were presented as legitimate, but were little more than an effort on the part of the United States to provoke Iranian behavior that would be monitored by US and EU NATO intelligence assets to generate targets to be struck by Israel.
Amazing.
Mhm. Regime change, not disarmament. Current reporting suggests Iran may declare war on Israel.
I
Such
think
dec
I think they have now declared war on Israel.
yes, such declaration would transform this conflict into an existential struggle between a nation, Israel, which has been sold to the American public as a staunch ally of the United States, and another, Iran, which has, from the very inception of the Islamic Republic, been viewed as a moral enemy. There is no doubt as to which side the U.S. will take. This means that eventually, sooner rather than later, the United States will throw its military might in with Israel to achieve the strategic defeat of Iran. Quote, the strategic defeat is a euphemism for regime change. Iran had one opportunity to prevent this inevitable and predictable outcome, to negotiate a new nuclear deal with the United States that verifiably eliminated Iran's status as a nuclear weapon threshold state. Rather than locking the U.S. into a deal, however, Iran allowed the process to be dragged out, thereby allowing itself to be trapped by a process that was never intended to produce a finalized deal, but always to buy time for Israel to be able to deliver its knockout blow. Today, Iran has only one chance at survival. It must be understood that Iran will never be permitted to possess a nuclear weapon. Should it now seek to do so, Iran will be physically destroyed. The solution to Iran's nuclear program, however, cannot be allowed to be provided through military intervention by Israel and or the United States. Instead, Iran must deliver extremely harsh blows against the state of Israel, strikes so utterly devastating that Israel has no choice but to plead for the United States to step into a broker a peace deal.
Okay, so that last few paragraphs, uh, I'm not sure I agree with those flat statements that Scott has made, all along. But I do agree with the final statement that Iran must deliver extremely harsh blows against the state of Israel.
Definitely.
Strike so utterly devastating that Israel has no choice but to plead for the United States to step in to broker a peace deal. Now, that's different from pleading with the United States to step in to fight their war for them. I
Hmm.
think right now they're at the stage where they're pleading for the United States to come in and help them to fight. But I think the Iranians need to deliver harsh, the kinds of blows that are harsh enough to persuade, the United States that it cannot win a war against Iran, especially if it's backed by Russia and by China. And so the only way to save Israel is for the United States to come in and to broker a peace deal. And in fact, not simply for the United States to come in and broker a peace deal, because I don't think that's going to work, because I don't think that the Iranians are in the position of trusting the United States any further when it comes to brokering a peace deal. But I think the United States will have to come in with the Russians, and maybe the two conjointly broker a peace deal, because the Iranians are trusting of the Russians, and the Israelis have no choice but to, trust the United States. And I think in that process, it may be that we'll be seeing the last of Netanyahu. I certainly hope so.
Hmm.
Well, here are the hypersonics coming in. Please go on.
Okay, Iranian missiles inbound to Israel October 2nd, 2024. And the foundation of this peace deal must be the normalization of Iran's nuclear program within the framework of the NPT. Is such an outcome possible? Yes, but it will require the near destruction of Israel by Iran.
I think Scott is right about that.
Yes, True Promise 3, the long awaited Iranian ballistic missile assault against Israel, has been threatened by Iran for many months now. Iran must now execute this operation with perfection and decisiveness if it wants to survive. Anything less will spell the end of the Islamic Republic of Iran.
Yeah, I think in many ways that was a pregnant piece by Scott. especially the final part of it. Uh, okay, and I was happy to see it. Uh, he was taking positions, oh, I guess about a month or two ago, uh, very harshly attacking the Iranians for becoming, a nuclear threshold uh, state and providing the Israelis with an incentive to attack them. I never really agreed with that because I
Mhm.
always felt that uh, 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 the incentive for the Israelis to
Mhm.
attack Iran was not, uh, uh, that they were getting close to becoming a nuclear power, but that their very existence and their military capability was standing in the way of greater Israel. That was the incentive for the Israelis to attack them.
Mhm.
Uh, and that wouldn't have changed. In other words, that wasn't changed by the fact that they were becoming a nuclear threshold state. So, anyway, for what all that is worth, well, we've now got 148 people. Was Pepe saying was a case of serendipity you cited? Well, we'll get into what Pepe thinks in a while, so we'll wait to go over those. Uh, Evelina says, Dr. Joe, can you explain what made it easy for Israel to penetrate Iran's communication system, which permitted Israel to successfully attack in the first place? I can't explain. I haven't found any detailed accounts of that. What I said was based on a remark of Pepe that we'll see, in the future when we go over, the interview he had uh, uh, um, 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 with Nima. But he's in Russia, and he's been tapping information sources there. He has a lot of information sources there, and I guess some of the Russians, were made privy to attacks, to the idea that the communication system of Iran was penetrated by the Israelis. Okay, now I'm sure what made it easy is the Israelis had people they bought inside of the communication system, and they probably gave the Israelis the codes. I'm sure that's what happened. Evelina says, "Not sure I understood the explanation." Well, I don't have the specifics of it yet, Evelina. I don't think Pepe had them either. Was it an element of surprise? If so, shouldn't Iran have been prepared? Uh, I think that was a surprise, but to have been prepared, the Iranians would have had to root out the people who were bought by Israel, within their system. And uh, I think there's a lot to be desired when you compare, Iranian intelligence to Israeli intelligence. I think the Iranians have had a recent success in getting some documents, revealing a lot
Mhm.
of the nuclear facts of Israel. But that's the first intelligence success I can remember them having for a very, very long time. In contrast to that, Mossad is always coming up with uh, things it learns from informants and spies. It seems like Mossad has been penetrating Iran for years on end now.
Yes.
I mean, it's really, that's how they accomplished, the assassination of, uh, uh, the possible assassination uh, of the president of Iran, the previous president of Iran, uh, uh, the Hania assassination. Okay. Also, they got information on where Soleimani was going to be, and so they attacked and assassinated Soleimani. So their successes against the Iranians, go back years and years. Okay, so maybe it wasn't a surprise that something like that happened in this instance. But what was a surprise to me, anyway, was how quickly the Iranians were able to compensate for this and turn on their air defense systems again.
Mm-hmm.
Was Pepe saying it was a case of serendipity? No, I don't think it was serendipity. I think it was a case of corruption inside of the Iranian system. Joe Logan says, can't tell whether you're agreeing or disagreeing, Joe. Anyway, that's fine. Got a lot of people here tonight. We're at the level of 147 people, so that's pretty good. So let us move on. Pretty good for us, anyway. Let us move on to our next piece, which is a short rant by Scott Ritter. It's a video, and we'll handle that in the usual way. It actually comes from the Jimmy Dore show, and I will discuss this and comment on it as we go through it. And Dee will also, if she will join me.
Okay.
So here we are. Uh, I'm sharing it.
Clearly, whatever damage Israel did to Iran's um, operational capability wasn't enough to stop what was a very large and concerted attack.
Here's some of the footage coming in. Iran bombing Tel Aviv. Iran launching hundreds of ballistic missiles in retaliation for the Israeli strike on sites across Iran. And to analyze all of this and break it down for us, we're going to bring in our first guest. He is Scott Ritter, a former Marine Corps intelligence officer, UN weapons inspector, who writes at scottritter.substack.com. Scott Ritter, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So we're just reacting to news as it's unfolding. Right now, we are watching Iran retaliate. What do you make so far of this strike by Iran against Israel, hitting Tel Aviv, including possibly Israel's military headquarters?
Inside every single Tesla vehicle is a secret technology that's about to unlock an entirely new.
Well, first of all, any notion that Israel might have had by carrying out its Pearl Harbor attack, its surprise attack against Iran, that it would somehow be able to prevent an Iranian retaliation, I think that's been laid to rest. Clearly, what damage Israel did to Iran's ballistic missile operational capability wasn't enough to stop what was a very large and concerted attack. The other thing that comes out is that many people thought that it was going to be Iran that was defenseless. In fact, you heard statements coming from Israel that, in the United States, that Trump, you have no defenses, you're defenseless, surrender now, and we'll show mercy to you, or something of that nature. Well, apparently, Israel today lost an F-35. That's the information that's coming out. I can't confirm that yet. Maybe a pilot captured.
Just to interject here, the Israelis are now said to have lost 3 of the F-35s.
Israeli missiles that were fired into Iran were intercepted. So Iran has reconstituted its defensive capabilities.
Okay, just to add something there too, there are a number of people in the command structure of Iran, that were assassinated in the first wave, of the Israelis. It was thought by some that it would take, the Iranians days to recover from the loss of these people. But the Iranians had anticipated something like that. Okay, and they were at the ready with successors for the very important people who were killed. They had the successors in place, in hours, and therefore they were ready to go to the retaliatory action the very next day. And nobody was expecting that. That was a big surprise.
Iranian missile attack shows that Israel is defenseless. Israel can't defend against this. The Iranian attacks involve very advanced missile systems that not only have the ability to penetrate but to saturate the Israeli defenses. And these are Israeli defenses backed up by the United States, by the way. The reports are that American Aegis ships were also involved in the attempted interception of Iranian missiles. The THAAD missile defense system, the best that the United States has, was involved. And they couldn't stop this attack. And this is just day one. Israel will run out of missiles. That is a guarantee. Israel does not have sufficient stock to continue this level. Will Iran run out of missiles? What happens if this continues for 5 days from now and there are no more missiles to defend Israel? What happens when we run out of missiles? Remember, our ships have a finite stockpile of missiles. When we run out of SM-3s, SM-6s, and Iran doesn't run out of missiles, and now Israel is just laying there exposed. This could literally be the end of Israel. This is the stupidity that should have been factored in when Israel initiated this Pearl Harbor event.
Okay, so let's note here also that Scott, in another place, at this just after the Israeli attack, had thought that the Iranians were defenseless because their air defense system wasn't working during the first attack. So it appeared they were defenseless. But as I said before, they were able to reconstitute their capability to defend, in just a few hours. And as of today, it is still intact. So the Iranians have an air defense system right now that can stop most of what the Israelis have to throw against them. But as Scott just said, the Israelis' defense systems that they painstakingly built over a period of years are ineffective against the hypersonic missiles. That's a very important thing to understand.
That's my next question. I mean, you say that Israel is defenseless and could run out of missiles. Don't you think that was factored in when they decided to launch this attack? And that leads me to think that they do have enough missiles to repel this Iranian counterattack. I mean, why are you so confident that Israel is defenseless?
A good question from Aaron. And Scott, I think, is about to give a good answer.
Here's how a doctor treats toenail fungus without a prescription. If your toenail fungus came back after using tea tree, Vicks, or a common fungus cream.
Well, we know Israel ran out of missiles last time. So, and I know that there's a finite manufacturing capacity. So between October of last year and this year, how many missiles could Israel have produced? Not that many. We know the United States runs out of missiles. That's one of the reasons why we had trouble against the Houthis. We were running out of surface-to-air missile intercept. We know that Iran, allegedly has stockpiled, thousands of missiles. So I'm confident in my production math. I'm not claiming that I have access to the production records, but I know what it takes to build an intercept missile. I know how expensive they are, and I know that Israel could not have built sufficient capacity between October and this year to survive thousands of Iranian missiles coming in. Now, the question is, does Iran retain thousands of missiles? We don't know what damage Israel did to Iran's capacity. We know that they struck Piran Shah, and other known Iranian ballistic missile operational bases, but we don't know what damage, if any, was done to the missiles themselves. So I'm just telling you right now that one of the ways that missile defense systems fail is that they just run out of interceptors. And you see this right now. We don't know what the launch to intercept factor is. For instance, in Ukraine, the Patriot missile now has been refined to where basically they're firing 4 interceptors against a single ballistic missile incoming. And that's after years of refinement. We don't know First of all, there's multiple layers of the Israeli air defense, and so they're going to seek to engage out far with David Sling and Arrow 3 and others. But if they fail, they already fired those interceptors. They failed. Now they're coming into the second layer, and here you're going to see THAAD and Patriot. And when they fail, you come into the final intercept. So for each Iranian missile that successfully intercepts the Earth, you may be looking at upwards of 12 interceptor missiles being fired against them. You can't sustain a 12-to-1 ratio like that. It's fiscally impossible and it's physically impossible. So that's why, I mean, there's a good chance that, and you say, I mean, you say, why would Israel start something like this? I've said from the very beginning that Israel cannot initiate and sustain a strategic air campaign against Iran. It lacks the capacity to do so. They can initiate a strategic air campaign, which they did. They can't sustain it. It's unsustainable. They don't have the force structure to do that. They don't have the weapons capacity. The only nation in the world that has that capacity is the United States. The United States has been reticent about getting involved in a strike against Iran. I believe Israel, I think they tried to convince Trump, who's emerging as one of the dumbest men on the planet, excuse me. They convinced him over the objection of the Pentagon, because I know the people in the Pentagon. I don't know all of them, but I know some of them, and I know of the people, meaning the kind of people they put there. They're not idiots. They know reality. They are able to do basic military math, and nobody in the Pentagon would have said Israel has a snowball's chance in hell of delivering a knockout blow against Iran. The president listened to Netanyahu, got the briefings from Netanyahu's people, and believed in it because he's bragging. I gave you 60 days, and on day 61, the Israelis hit the knockout blow, and I warned you it was coming. Now you must beg and come crawling to me for peace. So that means he was involved in this. That means he was knowledgeable of this. His tweets are literally, they condemn him in the eyes of the world. If Trump, the president, believed that Israel could deliver the knockout blow, then he would give the green light. And it appears that's what he did. Now Trump is going to be confronted with the fact that he was lied to by the Israelis, that the Israelis lacked the capacity to finish the job. And now Israel is going to be bending over backwards to get the United States to intervene. And we know the United States is prepared to do this. The General Kurilla has briefed the White House on strike options. And I want to make one point on that, because a lot of people will say, well, that's normal. It's normal for an American general to brief America must be ready for anything. If the president of the United States greenlit an Israeli attack against Israel, and you have General Kurilla briefing the president before the attack.
An attack against Iran, yeah.
Iran, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. It's been a long day here.
I know,
You have no idea how long this day has been. I think you do have an idea how long this day has been. It's a crazy day. So I'm lucky I can even talk right now. But for Kurilla to give this briefing, it means that United States military planners are intimately knowledgeable of every aspect of what Israel has done here. Every aspect. I've done this kind of planning before. I'm here to tell you right now, we know that Israel put special operations forces on the ground inside Iran. I will tell you that.
That's the first time I've heard of that they had special operation forces inside of Iran. Maybe that's how they disrupted the communication system. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
If America is thinking about getting involved, and we don't know at which stage we could get involved, let's say Iran, those missiles today went against American bases. We'd have American aircraft in Iran right now, guaranteed. We will not allow Iran to attack us. But to do that, we have to know where the Israeli Special Operations Forces are, which means that our JSOC people, our Special Operations Command people, are in continuous contact with their liaison services with Israel, who are telling us where the guys are on the ground, plotting out the no-go zones, etc., to have deconfliction. If Israel is continuing to launch another wave of attacks, we need to know that so we deconflict it from our attacks. We can't have our aircraft flying into areas where Israeli missiles go. That means the United States knows everything about the Israeli attack. We are intimately involved in it. We helped plan it, and we're ready to be folded into it at any time. This is one of the greatest challenges Iran's going to face in the coming days, is don't allow Israel to escalate this conflict to the point that the United States comes involved, because that is Israel's only chance. Only chance. They need to get the United States involved. If they don't, Israel can't survive this politically. This is devastating to Israel politically, and it's probably devastating to them economically. We don't know what was hit, but we don't know what capacity is removed. But if Iran can sustain this level of attack for 5 days, and as Israel runs out of missile intercept capability, Israel is defenseless, and that's it. Israel just lost the war. So Iran's goal right now is to sustain this attack and not get the United States involved. Israel's goal right now is to get the United States involved.
Come see us on tour in Glass.
Okay, so I thought that was a brilliant analysis by Scott. And I mean, I don't know anybody else like him who can get into the intimate details of the mechanics of the military operations, okay, to be able to tell us or to prove, in a sense, what he did there is he proved that we were intimately involved in this Israeli operation from the start. That couldn't have been done without our collaboration from the start. So Trump is up to his ears in collaboration, with the Israelis on this. He's not some innocent third party. As usual, he and the United States are complicit in the Israeli operations. And also, one other reason, why did Israel start it when it finish it? Why would they start it if they knew they weren't going to be able to finish it? And the reason why is from the beginning, they always planned to have the United States actively back them up. And they were convinced that the United States was going to do that because the United States helped them to plan that operation in the first place from the start. So they're convinced that when the time comes, that Trump is going to go ahead and put in, U.S. forces. But here's where I disagree with Scott about something. He said that it was going to be possible for the U.S., if it comes in, to sustain, the Israeli operations by supplying the material that is needed, and that we're the only power around that could possibly do that. Well, that might be, but I'm convinced the Iranians can sustain their level of attack for far more than the 5 days. I mean, what are they doing? Firing 1,000 missiles a day or something like that? At the end of 5 days, that's only 5,000 missiles. We know they've got a lot more than that in their stock. Even if they sustain some losses in the first Israeli attack, they have plenty of missiles, plenty of drones to keep on firing. And when we come in, I don't know how many missiles and how many drones we have. I don't know if we could sustain the Israeli efforts, even if we came in. Before the whole thing started, Larry Johnson was writing a number of well-taken blogs, basically contending that if we fought a war with Iran, we would lose. Doug McGregor thinks if we fight a war with Iran, we're going to lose. Dan Davis thinks if we fight a war with Iran, we're going to lose. So all these people, of course, are military experts and well aware of the military strengths, of both sides, and well aware of the military strength of the United States that has been drained now for months and months and months, by the proxy war in Ukraine. So, in one of the blogs we went over last time, or did we do it at the beginning of this? I forget. I think it was the first thing we covered today. But basically, Larry Johnson was putting out a pleading to Donald Trump not to get involved in this with our troops, but to resist. Now, some people might think it's automatic that Trump is going to go in. But I don't know, as we've been hearing in recent weeks, there is the idea of Taco Trump. And I think there's a little validity to that particular notion. When it comes to it, what Trump did with respect to the Houthis is, after a while, he gave up because he was probably getting advice from the Pentagon that we couldn't sustain the effort, against the Houthis, and that if we continued, we would lose our naval assets in the Red Sea. Well, are we going to be able to sustain an action against the Iranians if we couldn't sustain one against the Houthis? I don't think so. And I think Trump is going to run away from the prospect. People inside the Pentagon are going to advise him, no, we cannot manage this. There are, too many of the Iranian missiles. And behind Iran stands Russia and China. And Russia has already told Trump in no uncertain terms that the Russians are going to back Iran. And what are they going to back Iran with? Hypersonic missiles and air defense systems so that the Iranians will be able to sustain their attacks on Israel, even if they should begin to run out of missiles themselves. So I think we're looking at a situation which is checkmate for the United States. Now, Trump, as foolish as he may be, and as lacking in intelligence as he may be, and more people are accusing him that of late, he's going to see that he's in a checkmated position, and he will move the way Scott wants him to move, to sit down at the conference table, to force the Israelis to sit down at the conference table and come to an agreement with all their neighbors. And that means finally a solution, to the Middle Eastern problem. Now, of course, all this is extremely risky, very, very risky, because there can be mistakes at any point in the way. And we're risking a nuclear war here. There's no question about that, because the Russians, if they get involved, they are the nuclear power. So all this is just extremely risky, but it's something that may come out in the end in the best way possible at this point, which is a resolution of the conflicts inside of the Middle East, because the United States doesn't have the capability to sustain attacks, against Iran. So anyway, I wanted to make that clear. Now, I have to confess here that I played the Aaron Mate Scott Ritter video too soon. I wanted to get to the first of the rants that Scott Ritter has introduced into the analysis situation. It's another deal. It's roughly 10 minutes. So I'm going to start sharing that one now. Even though it's a little late, it still has some insights that are worth taking a look at. So let me share that. Okay, let me make sure OD has cut off her mic because there's so much noise at her place. Okay, well, that's okay. So we'll share Scott's small video here and comment on it as we go through.
Hello and welcome to the first edition of what I'm calling the Ritter rant. This is an opportunity for not spontaneous, but extemporaneous monologue on developing situations. And we have a hell of a developing situation taking place right now in Iran. This morning, last night, Israel carried out what can only be described as a Pearl Harbor type event, a surprise attack against Iran that goes beyond anything I think anybody had possibly imagined. This is a comprehensive, broad spectrum attack which has targeted Iran's leadership. It's targeted Iran's nuclear infrastructure, its ballistic missile infrastructure, its air defense, and is threatening to target Iran's, the basic basis for its economic survival, Iran's oil and gas production capabilities. In short, this is a full-scale attack against Iran designed to achieve one thing, and that is the elimination of the theocracy that currently governs the Islamic Republic of Iran. Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, has come out and spoken directly to the Iranian people, encouraging them to take advantage of the disarray, the chaos has been engendered by this Israeli attack to overthrow the government. And ultimately, by initiating this strike against Iran, Israel has begun a process of existential survival. Only one nation will emerge from this conflict intact. Either it's going to be Israel or it's going to be Iran. And right now,
that went at very high speed.
The odds favor Israel. Now, what does this mean in a broader context? Let's bring in Russia for the moment. On January 17th of this year, Russia signed a strategic framework agreement with Iran, a 20-year agreement that was designed to bring the nations together in terms of the economic cooperation, geopolitical cooperation, military and security cooperation. And it was born of a strategic partnership that has its roots in Russia's own existential issues. Russia found itself in a very difficult situation vis-a-vis its conflict with Ukraine regarding the use of drones, and Iran stepped up to the plate and cooperated with Russia, providing drone expertise, providing drone technology that enabled Russia to get through a very difficult time. And today, from this drone cooperation, Russia has achieved drone supremacy over Ukraine and the collective West.
That's a very good point, of course, from Scott. They never would have achieved that without the help, of the Iranians.
Iran paid a price, though. It by supporting Russia, Iran was targeted both by Ukraine and its Western allies in Europe and the United States. And Iran has also been singled out by Israel as being a nation that needs to be targeted. What does this mean to have an ally of Russia targeted in this fashion? What does it mean for Russia? If Russia is going to say we are a strategic partner, if Russia is going to say we are a strategic ally, then what does it say about Russia when their partner, their ally, is targeted for elimination? What does Russia do? What can Russia do? This isn't just an academic exercise. Russia has invested a lot of political capital into creating the North-South economic corridor, a strategic line of communication that connects Russia to Iran through Azerbaijan and other countries. The whole purpose of this is to bypass strategic waterways that are expensive to operate on and are controlled by nations potentially hostile to Russia. This is about Russia's national security interests. It's also about China's national security interests. China just recently sent a train along what is called the New Silk Road, connecting China to Iran. Iran is the hub of a new Eurasian vision of economic and geopolitical security. And now Iran's very existence is at risk, attacked by not just Israel, but this is where it becomes trickier for Russia, by the United States. Israel could not have carried out the actions against Iran without the explicit permission of the United States. Moreover, it appears that the United States has used the subterfuge of diplomacy as a mechanism of enabling this attack by luring Iran into the belief that there was the potential of a diplomatic off-ramp, that Iran could engage in dialogue with the United States to come up with a new nuclear framework agreement that would bring an end to, this nuclear crisis, and therefore bring an end to the threat of Israel's attacking. But it appears that the United States has been with Israel all along, and that this diplomatic subterfuge was simply a mechanism designed to lull Iran into a false sense of complacency, to set Iran up for this Israeli Pearl Harbor event. What lesson should Russia draw from this? Well, the first lesson is that the United States, especially as it's currently manifested, cannot be trusted at all. This is a sad state of affairs because there's no greater time than now for meaningful Russian-American diplomatic engagement.
That's a tremendously important point by Scott. The Iranian situation and the whole attack on Iran raises the question again of whether the United States is agreement capable, whether the United States can be trusted, what the actual intentions of the United States are. Are we trying to end conflicts or resolve conflicts, or are we trying to accomplish the strategic defeat of other states such as Iran, and Russia? And the issue of trust not only applies to whether Iran can trust us or not. Of course, the Iranians now have concluded, obviously, they can't trust us at all. But also, it hits on the issue of whether Putin can trust us and whether Russia can trust us. Now, Putin has been advocating for trusting Trump inside of leadership circles, inside of Moscow. Will he continue to do that? I mean, at this point, he's got to look somewhat foolish for trusting Trump to the extent that he does. Because Trump, of course, is faithless. I think he's totally untrustworthy.
We have a strategic nuclear treaty expiring in February of next year. There is no viable replacement without this. The potential of the United States and Russia spinning off into a nuclear arms race is very high. We have the United States, continuing to embrace a policy that seeks the strategic defeat of Russia in Ukraine at the same time that we're seeking to claim that we want a negotiated settlement. Can Russia ever trust the United States? Why would Russia ever want to trust the United States? When the United States says it wants a negotiated outcome, what it appears the United States is saying is that we want you to drop your guard, until which time we can facilitate the delivery of a knockout blow.
Of course, that's the conclusion that would be drawn from what just happened with Iran.
When we're speaking of a knockout blow, we're not speaking of hypotheticals. One must keep in mind that it was only a week ago that Russia found its strategic nuclear deterrence under attack by an American proxy, Ukraine. Russia has a nuclear doctrine that's predicated on the notion that if a non-nuclear state like Ukraine is used by a nuclear weapons power like the United States to launch attacks against Russia's strategic nuclear infrastructure, that is crossing a red line that could justify Russia's use of nuclear weapons in response. So far, Russia has behaved pragmatically, responsibly, not seeking to escalate. Sort of the same way Iran has behaved, not escalating, not launching its own preemptive strike, even when Israel is threatening to act against it, believing in diplomacy, believing in the potential of dialogue to resolve issues. And yet look at where Iran is today. And that's something that Russia needs to consider too, how it interacts with the United States. What is the real prospect of good relations based upon diplomacy. Iran is a test. It's a test for Iran. It's a test for Russia. It's a test for the world. And if these nations fail this test, what it shows is that the United States is justified in lying, cheating, deceiving, relying upon military power, not diplomacy, to gain and preserve and promote the hegemony that the world has said they're tired of. The world's
Not sure I would draw that particular conclusion. I might draw the opposite conclusion of what I think is a brilliant analysis. Okay, specifically, uh, what it's beginning to show is that no one can trust the United States to negotiate with, to make agreements with, to keep agreements with, that we are not an agreement capable country at this point. Now, of course, it's also characteristic of the United States that with each new administration, there seems to create an opportunity for us to become an agreement capable nation again. But I mean, it's probably been, I don't know now, maybe 30, 35, even 40 years since we were an agreement capable nation. Can we become one again? Well, we are, of course, in a process that will probably yield really big changes inside of our political system. I'm assuming now that in domestic politics in the United States, there will be changes, that bring an end to Trumpism, okay, and to MAGA. And maybe then, when new groups come in, we will be an agreement capable nation again. But I have to emphasize that if the process only succeeds in bringing us another Biden or a figure, such as a Gavin Newsom or somebody like that, we may again enter a time when we're not agreement capable. And that's a very important issue to me.
speaks of a multipolar world, but there can't be a multipolar world if one power is allowed to go out and violently suppress the ambitions, the legitimate ambitions, the projection of sovereignty of other nations. That's what's happening with Iran today. And Russia has to ask the question, is that Russia's future tomorrow? This has been Ritter's Rant, and I'll see you next time something happens worthy of a rant.
I'm not sure that was, okay, as much of a rant as we see from Scott when he goes on a rant on the judges program, or on Nanny Haifang's program, or on Nima's program, or on countless other programs that he goes on. Okay, so I think it's funny that he called this a rant. It didn't seem to be too much of one, but that's not to say that it wasn't excellent. I think it was excellent, and he made many, many good points, but they seem to be much more carefully considered than when he's really into something and really going on a rant with quite a bit of emotion. So I'm not sure that was a rant, but I think it was very excellent. So I will now check to see comments. Evelina says, okay, thanks, Dr. Joe, Israel's superior intelligence, which includes bribing people and tapping traitors. It's all based on corruption. Evelina says, ugh. Evelina says, resolution of the conflict, please. Sure, we'll all be on board with that. And Evelina sees some icons, which I cannot easily make out in this interface. I guess one is this icon. No, you can't see it because I seem to be frozen. My camera seems to be frozen, which is kind of interesting. I'm pretty sure you can hear me, though. And that, of course, is good. If you can't hear me, let me know, please, in a comment, because I can't see the comments. So, anyway, Dee, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, good. As long as people can hear me, it's all right. But I do seem to be frozen on the screen for some reason. So, okay, let us now go to our next piece, which is it's a blog, from Pepe Escobar, which I picked up at the Young's Review. Whose turn is it now? Dee, is it your
It's
turn?
yours. It's your turn.
Okay. Okay. So let me share the screen then for this piece from the Young's Review. I don't think it was originally published there, but we'll find out where it was originally published again. It's called "The Whole Planet is Being Kept Hostage by a Death Cult." What is a death cult? Of course, it's the current regime in Israel. That is certainly aptly described as a death cult. This piece was published on June 13th, 2025. I guess I am successfully sharing it right now. I'll make it a little larger. So we can see it better. So it was written on June 13th. That's yesterday. Well, published there on June 13th anyway. There's a picture of an Israeli plane. It looks to me like an F-16, but I can't really tell for sure. It's no wonder Washington is all in. This is now the circus ringmaster war. Circus ringmaster, of course, is one of the names Pepe has for Donald Trump. Let's cut to the chase. The devastating attack on Iran by the psychopathological genocidal, quote, chosen, unquote, ethno-supremacist setup in Tel Aviv, a de facto declaration of war, was coordinated in detail with the President of the United States, circus ringmaster Donald Trump. This infantilism afflicted Narcissus, drowned in the pool of his own image, gave away the game himself in a rambling post, selected highlights. Quote, I gave Iran chance after chance to make a deal, unquote. No, quote, deal, unquote, actually his unilateral demands. After all, he torpedoed the original deal, the JCPOA, because it was not his, quote, deal, unquote. Quote again, I told them it would be much worse than anything they know, anticipated, or were told, unquote. The decision to strike had already been made when he said that, of course, says Pepe. Quote again, certain hardliners spoke bravely, but they are all dead now, and it will only get worse, unquote. And Pepe says gloating comes with the territory. And quote again from Trump, the next already planned attacks being even more brutal, unquote, total alignment with the trademark Israeli, quote, decapitation, unquote, strategy. Quote again, Iran must make a deal before there is nothing left and save what was once known as the Iranian Empire, unquote. Pepe says, it was Persian, italics mine, empire. But after all, this is a man who doesn't read or study. Notice the art of diplomacy. Take my deal or drop dead. This incandescent decade was launched by an assassination of General Soleimani in Baghdad. As I emphasized in my 2021 book, Raging 20s, he was on a diplomatic mission. The green light personally came from then President of the United States, Donald Trump. The mid-raging 20s is now hurled to the brink of a devastating war in West Asia with global repercussions. Repercussions by the serial assassination of the IRGC leadership in Tehran by the psycho-genocidal Zionist entity. After an elaborate kabuki of deception, the green light to Tel Aviv, go ahead and do it, also came from the President of the United States, Trump 2.0, who claimed he was, quote, he was aware, unquote, of the attacks. A preemptive war against the BRICS. The psycho-pathological genocidal master plan is to force Tehran to capitulate without even putting up a fight. The preamble kabuki was masterfully executed. The indirect, nuclear negotiations in Oman were taken seriously in Tehran, lulling the Iranian leadership, civilian and military, to sleep. They fell into the trap and were caught literally in their sleep. The Ayatollah Khamenei, who himself is in physical danger, as Israel is applying the same decapitation model it unleashed on Hezbollah, has a very tough decision to make: capitulation or total war. It will be total war, and with the U.S. as a direct participant. Okay, by the way, so far, to my knowledge, there's been no participation by Hezbollah in these attacks from the Iranian side. That surprises me a bit. I think Hezbollah has had quite a bit of time to recover, and that it would be wise of them to get a piece of Israel right now when it's fully occupied, with the Iranians. I think the Houthis are continuing their attacks, but at a low level. But I think in the case of both the Houthis and Hezbollah, now is a very good time, to deliver their missiles and rockets and drones to various parts of Israel. But anyway, that's just an opinion of a non-military expert like myself. The Iranian leadership, actually more the Pezeshkian presidency, crammed with proponents of quote, accommodation, unquote, with the West, was induced into a false sense of security, forgetting that serial killers don't do diplomacy. So the price to pay now for Iran will be even more unbearable. Tehran will respond, assuming capabilities are still in place. I'm sure Pepe is by now glad to know that the capabilities are in place. In this case, its oil industry runs the risk of being destroyed. It's an open question whether two other top BRICS members alongside Iran, Russia, and China, for different reasons, will allow that to happen. And were we about to enter this particular dangerous territory, Iran could play the ultimate card: shut down the Strait of Hormuz and collapse the global economy. So there, Mr. Genius, Mr. Stable Genius, Donald Trump, will then have some responsibility for having shut down the global economy. Perhaps this will be enough to get all the people of America to recognize that this is the worst president that we have ever had. Jesus. The attack on Iran, fully endorsed by the Empire of Chaos, is above all a preemptive attack on the BRICS energy core. It's part and parcel of the imperial war against BRICS, especially Russia, China. Moscow and Beijing must be drawing the necessary conclusions in real time. Iran, China, and Russia are linked by interlocked strategic partnership. Last month, I was in Iran tracking the progress of the International North-South Transportation Corridor, the INSTC, which links Russia, Iran, and India. This is only one among a series of key strategic infrastructure projects that will solidify even more Eurasian economic connectivity. The devastating war in West Asia and a collapsing Iran will represent a killer blow to increased uh, 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 Eurasia integration. That's exactly what suits the empire's designs. So it is no wonder Washington is all in. This is now the circus ringmaster war. The next section is a devastating response, a nuclear weapon, or capitulation. Tehran's message is, quote, we did not start the war, but Iran will determine how it ends, unquote. The burning question is whether they still retain a significant deterrent and offensive capacity. I think they've already shown they do. Going on, though, okay, the genocidals are hitting ballistic missile storage systems at will in Iran's northwest, and even the civilian Mehrabad airport in Tehran. Air defenses are nowhere to be seen. It's immensely painful to watch. Well, later on, Pepe changed his mind about that, as we'll see in the next video when we get to it. IDF spin, nothing verified so far, claims that some missile silos and mobile complexes were destroyed even before they were placed on combat alert. Yet the fact is that the overwhelming majority of Iran's vast arsenal of ballistic missiles is stored in deep underground silos and tunnels capable of withstanding massive airstrikes and overloaded air defenses. For the moment, Tehran is eerily silent. That makes sense because they need in record time to reestablish a unified chain of command, which was smashed by the attacks. And again, we know they did reestablish that in record time. Sure, they have to make sure that the missile launchers can be deployed and not be neutralized by Israeli air supremacy, reorganize the True Promise 3 operation, which was ready to go, as some of us learned in Tehran last month, but now adapted to the new situation, losses included, and plan how to deliver painful blows to Israel's economic infrastructure. It's obvious the Iranians have now done all that, which is very good news from the Iranian point of view. There is no evidence that the attacks destroyed Iran's nuclear infrastructure, which is buried deep underground. As it stands, the leadership in Tehran is learning the hard way that diplomacy, committees, letters to the UN, statements to the IAEA, the ministerial meetings, all that is eviscerated when it comes to the law of the jungle. Iranians were naive enough to let the IAEA visit their strategic sites when proverbial spies collected all the info they needed to facilitate the Israeli strikes. The DPRK would have never fallen into such a trap. By the way, Pepe is making an argument here for withdrawal from the NPT for Iran, because the IAEA has shown itself it cannot be trusted. It obviously makes the info it gathers on inspections fully available to the collective West. That's been illustrated by what's gone on here. The elimination of a top figure such as Ali Shamkhani, Khamenei's key advisor, Iran's lead nuclear negotiator, with decades of influence across the IRGC and intelligence apparatus, is a serious blow. Systematically erasing Iran's military and diplomatic leadership in a matter of hours fits the rationale of smashing Khamenei's close circle. That has started long ago with the Trump-ordered killing of Soleimani, and certainly includes the mysterious deaths of former President Raisi and Foreign Minister Abdallah Hian in that dodgy helicopter accident, quote unquote. It's all about creating the conditions for regime change. One rare or auspicious note, the IRGC let it be known before the attacks, they have been developing a secret technology to intensify the impact of its missiles on Israel. We may be seeing the results of that because the Iranian missiles so far have been extremely effective in beating all of the air defense systems the Israelis and the United States set up to stop them. Okay, Pepe goes on and says, we are all riders on the storm now. Once again, there's no way out, either a devastating blow to the psycho-genocidals or Iran assembles a nuclear weapon in no time. The third option is capitulation, emasculation, and regime change. It's good he laid out the three options, but I think they're now in the process is a devastating blow to the psycho-genocidals. Meanwhile, the whole planet is hostage to a lethal threat. Andrea Jacques is professor of moral philosophy at the University of Milan, and apart from his brilliant analyses, he wrote the preface of the Italian edition of my book, Raging 20s, published last year. Professor Jacques, I think it's Jacques, Z-H-O-K, has succinctly pointed out how no political construction in modern history has amassed a toxic combination of messianic ethnic supremacism, supreme disregard for human life. Everyone else not, quote, chosen, unquote, is, quote, a Moloch. Anyway, supreme disregard for international law, and unlimited access to lethal firepower. So what is to be done with such a voracious, out-of-control death cult? Question mark. That is a rhetorical question. We all know what must be done with the death cult. Hopefully, Iran, reinforced by Russia and China, will have the capacity to do it. So, Evelina says, at the moment, the Lebanese are sporting binoculars and eating popcorn, perhaps not for long, now that another Hezbollah has been targeted. Oh, cool. I hadn't heard that, Evelina, but maybe they will reply in kind. They've been awfully quiet of late. Okay, we're now coming to the last of our pieces. That is an hour-long interview with Pepe Escobar, okay, and Nima Al-Rashid, on the Dialogue Works show. We will share that and go over some of it, but we won't have time to do the whole video, so I will be somewhat skipping through it. So here are Nima on your left and Pepe on your right.
Wow, Nima. These are historic times, and it couldn't be more hardcore than that. Well, it's 4:20 of 2:20 in the afternoon in Moscow. Everything is very quiet here because everybody's away because it's a 4-day holiday. But I heard that it's buzzing among the security agencies and all that. So they are meeting all the time to evaluate that. And just before we start, so far the Russian response has been too diplomatic, too polite. But there are echoes that Putin told Netanyahu explicitly, you better think twice where you're going, meaning that Russia will be supporting Iran.
Watch what eggs do to your brain. Take a look at these two brain scans.
Uh-oh.
They both look young.
Because they have a strategic agreement, which is not a full military alliance, but it's a strategic agreement. And one of the clauses is if one of them is attacked by a third power, you'll be supported by the other member of the strategic agreement. That's where we are now. And we can read that in several ways. Like Russia could send what Iran badly needs now, extra S-400 missile defense systems, something that Russia could do with no problem.
I would hope that Russia sends them the S-500 systems. But the S-400 systems are excellent. But in case Israel has some surprises in the way of missiles, the S-500 systems would be better.
And of course, if Iran needs something more hardcore, apparently they have their own very effective hypersonic missiles, and they still have a lot because they are buried underground. So they won't need Russian hypersonics. But it's getting very, the Chinese already condemned it, and the Chinese will be acting.
If the war goes on for long enough, they may need some of the Russian hypersonics as well. I just add that.
The background. And I think the most important thing, Anima, for all of us, for our audience, and for everybody who is following this is a war against BRICS, and now it's a hot war. And
well, just a thought crossed my mind. If it turns out that the United States actively intervenes, gets directly involved against Iran in this, then Russia might want to get directly involved, at least to the extent of sending, a few of the Oreshniks to Iran, to be used against Israel, because we're pretty clear the Russians have a stock of roughly 50 to 60 of those at this point. If they were to ship 5 or 6 to Iran for their use, it would only take 5 or 6 to devastate the main decision centers of Israel, and also, while they're at it, to destroy the settler communities in the West Bank. And they could probably target those without overlapping to Palestinian targets. 5 or 6 of the Oreshniks would really finish the war at that point, and I think deter the United States from doing any more to escalate that situation.
And don't forget that the current president of the United States now, he owns 2 wars. He owns the proxy war here, in our neighbors, in Novorossiya, and he owns the Israeli war against Iran. The ultimate objective of this is to fracture BRICS, to, by all means necessary, prevent Eurasia integration, which is the biggest theme and the biggest event of the 21st century, the total Eurasia integration in corridors of connectivity and trade among all them.
Okay, I think Pepe, is right about that, but I am not sure the United States has that so clearly in mind. From Trump's point of view, what the United States is doing may be merely a matter of accomplishing the strategic defeat of Russia and or the strategic defeat of Iran. and providing for Israeli supremacy in West Asia. He might not be conceptualizing so clearly that if there were a defeat of Iran in this situation, it would be devastating for BRICS and the further development, of BRICS. For Trump, that might be just the cherry on top. For Pepe, it's probably the most important thing. And maybe for us all, it's the most important thing, because at this point, I think those of us who have half a brain would like to see the multipolar world secure at this point.
And it's not by accident that the wars against are two of the top protagonists of disintegration and two top BRICS, Iran and Russia. So this is the big. This is the bigger picture. So now let's get down to business, Dima.
Yeah. Here is the video came out of Iran that shows somehow the same trucks that were used to carry drones to Russia. If you remember with the Ukrainian attack on Russia, this video came from Iran.
Yes.
And you look at this, you see they use this type of trucks to attack Iran before it started. And here is what the Russian ambassador at the UN said.
The Wallbot DIY2 is the most advanced stud finder on the market. And if you're looking for Christmas gift ideas for this holiday season,
of course, is not the Russian.
The current strikes by Israel, what we noticed is the information mass media about the fact that there was likely coordination between Israel and British special services. Immediately after the Israeli strikes, they sheltered the Israeli aviation, which participated in the strikes, in their bases in Cyprus. We also noticed a statement made by Israel when they said that they warned about their attacks. They warned Germany, JCPOA participant, and Italy. It also came to the fore that our American colleagues also had information about the strikes. The Israeli strikes were also supported by the French, who clearly knew about them beforehand.
The UK did not participate in this action. And let me say clearly and unequivocally that Russia's claim that British sovereign bases on the island of Cyprus were in any way involved is nonsense. It is deeply irresponsible at moments like this for Russia to be spreading disinformation.
Yeah.
What an absolute bumbling idiot. Of course, the only thing the Brits can do is to deny it, because now everybody and every intel agency and every think tank that is following it now know it's the same thing. Exactly what MI6, in coordination with the SBU and with input from Mossad, which was used later this week. This is what they did with those trucks full of drones inserted into Russian territory. And the exact procedure was reproduced with trucks full of drones entering Iranian territory. So, even a 6-year-old.
So this was a key part of the reason why the first wave attack of the Israelis was successful. They were using the drones and they were using the trucks that they had embedded in Iran long ago, waiting for this kind of moment. This was pre-planned, by Israel with the assistance of MI6 and the SBU and the Mossad. And Pepe failed to mention the CIA, but I'm sure the CIA was involved at some point in this particular process, because the CIA is always involved in stuff like this, with the Mossad. If Mossad is involved, CIA is involved.
Old can see that it is exactly the same thing. And the three main protagonists of this story: MI6, SBU, and Mossad.
Maybe it's somehow amazing that as you've mentioned, Donald Trump, while he was negotiating, talking with Iranians, and somehow preparing Iranian for the talks on Sunday, and they went to this sort of attack, which they know that what had happened between the United States and Yemen. They know what would be the reaction of Iran. I don't know, when you look at the mindset of these people who decided to go on Iran, to attack Iran, in your opinion, what it seems still they feel that they can change the regime in Iran, they can change the government, they can bring it down. It's somehow
Absolutely.
unbelievably out of sense, out of touch. Nobody can believe right now when I talk with Iranians in Iran,
Yes.
their unity is just increasing. People are getting more hate against the West and Israel, and these Israeli attacks are somehow unifying Iran and the people inside Iran. Unbelievable that I don't know if you saw the Mark Levin putting out that Starlink should be provided to Iranian people to do revolution. I don't know, whatever that Elon Musk said, everything's prepared for them to use it.
Yes. Okay. I'll try to give you and our audience the most concise explanation of why this war is happening. First of all, it has absolutely nothing to do with the Iranian nuclear program or Trump trying to come up with a JCPOA 2.0 after he broke the original JCPOA. This is all about regime change. Nothing else. Nothing else. So the first Israeli wave of attacks, which they were very, very, very lucky because they managed to hack the military communications in Iran. And it took Iranian technicians, the best that they have, 8 hours to put the system back together. Now it's back.
Okay. So there is Pepe making that critical point. I was mistaken when I said it was about a 4-hour time frame. Okay, he said it was an 8-hour time frame. And he was the one who got the news, okay, from some other people. So let's go with the 8-hour time frame. But let's notice that's an incredibly short time frame to, make things right again in the air defense system. It's an incredibly short time. And since the Israeli attacks come in waves, and since there's a gap between the first wave and second waves and third waves because of the maintenance problems with the planes, they can't keep continuous attacks going for 24 hours a day that easily and have them have the same intensity. Then that short-term period of 8 hours was probably effective in reducing the possible damage that the Israelis were able to deliver to the Iranians.
Back together. Iranian air defenses are working now and working very, very well. The first few hours, it was a disaster because Israel dominated the Iranian skies and they were bombing at random. It was horrible to watch. And everybody was asking, how come? Okay, the explanation, obviously, it's a cyber explanation. But of course, to put this all back together took a long time. And they put it back together in record time, in fact. This could have taken days.
Okay, so, Evelina, that was a better explanation, okay, than I gave. So now I think you have a little better understanding of how that was done.
Number one, so it was a mix of attacks on Iranian nuclear installations, which they will never manage to destroy because they are deep underground, as everybody knows. They destroy the surface, or they destroy some radars at the surface, and some installations at the surface. That's it. But the most important thing was the decapitation strikes. And this is exactly the modus operandi with Hezbollah. The IDF, the only thing that they really know what to do is one thing.
Get forklift certified with liftoff certifications, the top-rated provider of OSHA-compliant forklift.
Kill people. It's a killing machine and a genocidal machine at the same time. So,
okay, it's amazing to me why the opponents of Israel have not themselves replied with the same assassination tactics, in particular with respect to Iran. The Israelis have been using assassination on them for years. And of course, they saw the Hezbollah leaders getting assassinated en masse, last year. And yet, they still had developed no counter to that, and no deterrent capacity for that. Obviously, you develop a deterrent capacity if you reply in kind. Why, before now, hadn't the Iranians moved, to assassinate a Netanyahu or the chief of staff of the Israeli army? I mean, why didn't they try that? Why did they simply sit around after the Israelis assassinated Soleimani? I mean, they should have developed a corresponding assassination capability within 6 months of that.
So bombing people, hell from above, defenseless people, very, very easy. And of course, targeted assassinations. It's the only thing that they do. All of them. IDF, Shin Bet, the whole compound and the whole mindset. These imbeciles never understand that movements and strong sovereign nations, the people at the top, they can be replaced with people at the same level, and if not, even better, which is exactly what is going on through the high ranks of Hezbollah since the assassination of Sheikh Nasrallah. And it's already happening in Iran. Immediately, Ayatollah Khamenei appointed the substitutes of the leadership, the military dictatorship that was the military leadership that was assassinated, and of course Iranian scientists. But Iran has hundreds of highly qualified scientists, if not thousands. So everything linked to the Iranian nuclear program will continue. It's not, and the installations, maybe they had 2-3% of trouble this past 48 hours. So they made a mix of decapitating very important characters in the military sphere and the scientific sphere, and these attacks on military installations and the whole nuclear infrastructure of Iran. So far, negligible damage. But the whole thing masks what anybody who follows the neocons for the past in my case, more than 25 years. I was already following the neocons even before 9/11. I was following them since they came up with that clean break plan and their very close relationship with Netanyahu in the late 1990s. And after 9/11 was even worse, because all of us who were following the war on terror, we had to follow the famous neocon roadmap, 7 countries in 5 years. They managed to destroy between 5 and 6. And the jewel in the crown was always Iran. I'm sure you, Nima, remembers, and many of our audience remembers, by 2005, 2006, I was going to Iran every year at the time. And the blah, blah, blah from the neocon camp in the US was bomb, 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 bomb Iran. You remember, this was 20 years ago. Of course, during the Obama administration, this thing was a little bit sidelined because the Obama regime decided to have some sort of accommodation with Iran, and that's where the JCPOA was planned, discussed, and finally finalized and in Vienna 10 years ago, and then signed by the UN Security Council. But now, with the neocons back in power behind Trump, and they have a much stronger hand than Trump. And this has been proven for the past few weeks in detail, and especially for this past week. From now on, because Trump is a bumbling idiot, incapable of strategic thinking, and of course, incapable of fighting the deep state silos, nodes, and towers controlled by the neocons, which are still extremely powerful in the Beltway. And
Tesla is finished. Elon has failed. That is what they want you to believe. But tech expert Jeff Brown, who told everyone
financially via New York and the Atlanticist connection. So he's doing exactly what the American neocons want, which is exactly what genocidal Bibi Netanyahu wants. That famous war against Iran now fell on their lap. And they devised a plan, a ruse, which ended, unfortunately, the Iranians fell for it, Nima. And I'm sure a lot of soul searching has to go on in Tehran these next few days and weeks. How could we fall so blatantly into an American trap? Everybody from the beginning was thinking, this does not sound good. This does not look good. This sounds like a scheme. And in the end, it was a scheme, organized directly by Netanyahu with all these immense, powerful backers of the Zionist lobby in Washington and around it, forcing the hand of Trump, and either forcing Trump's hand or getting Trump into their own bandwagon. So now we cannot trust anything that Trump said, that he wanted to really strike Trump JCPOA 2.0 deal with Iran.
So again, the issue of trust emerges after what went on with Iran and the playing of the double game. Who can trust Trump in foreign policy any longer? What you're hearing, okay, is the sound of the thunder god, Thor. Okay.
And that absurdly incompetent post that he had today. Yes, I was telling them all the time, you have to do a deal now, otherwise you're going to be destroyed. Blah, blah. Nobody believes this shit. Because the plan from the beginning was to trap them and then create the conditions for the attack. Only a few days ago, Trump authorized sending 300 Hellfire missiles to Israel. And this was not this week, 3 or 4 days ago, it was days ago. So, so the whole, the king is naked and unmasked in the middle of his own circus. Now everybody knows that he knew from the beginning everything that was going to happen. He lured the Iranian leadership into a false sense of security, and unfortunately, they fell for it. No question. They were caught napping. Everybody, IRGC, Ministry of Foreign Relations, Arabshi, who was negotiating with Witkoff, etc.
The magnesium in your cabinet is not only filled with heavy metals, but it also can be making your age faster. And I'm about.
So I don't know if I talked about this with you, Nima, and with all of you, but last week there was a major meeting in Wall Street. Over 1,200 people, millionaires, billionaires, multi-billionaires, everybody, of course, the usual suspects all there. And Witkoff was basically telling them, Iran cannot have enrichment, has to be zero enrichment. They cannot have a nuclear program. They cannot have a ballistic missile program. And they have.
So the Wall Street people knew what the real intentions of Trump and the administration were. They knew that the administration was not going to come to an agreement with Iran, because by then it was quite clear that 3.67% was the red line for the Iranians. If they didn't get that, there would be no agreement.
We have to accept our deal. This is what he was basically saying to the room, a room full of power players. So it was all there. And it's such a pity. Okay, you can attribute to what? Lost in translation, cultural isolation, or not paying attention to signs coming from Washington. But Tehran, they should have been paying attention to all these details.
Yes, I think Pepe was correct about that. The Iranians missed a lot. I think it was probably due to, the cultural isolation that they have there. But they should have been able to divine U.S. intentions long before the attack from Israel.
And in the end, they were caught, like a deer in the headlights completely. The only auspicious sign in all this is that apparently they woke up in less than 24 hours after they put back together the military grid and their cyber informational military grid. And when they calculated the first stage of True Promise 3, which is now finally started, and now they're calculating the mid to long term, because this is going to be a long war and it's going to be horrible. There's no question about that.
So one thing I have to say about that is I agree with everything Pepe said there, by the way. But it was increasingly clear to me over a period of time that True Promise 3 should have followed the Israeli attack of October 26th last year very quickly. There should have been no delay, because it was necessary for Iran to establish deterrence, against Israel. They could have fired these 2,000 missiles at Israel or 3,000 missiles at Israel certainly within a week of that October 26th attack. But they were waiting. They were influenced by the election, hoping Trump would come in. They'd be able to negotiate with Trump and this and that. It was all nonsense. Had they hit Israel then in a big way, they had the capability to force Israel back on its heels. And I had been saying back then at that time that if they had attacked the settler communities, in Israel at that time, and by the way, this was in the context of retaliation against an Israeli attack. So there had been an Israeli attack. Under Article 51 of the UN, they were entitled to retaliate. If they had retaliated in early November with the intention of driving the settlers out of Israel and put down however many missiles would have been necessary to do that, maybe not 2,000, maybe 3,000, 4,000, they had the means to drive the settlers out, change the internal Israeli political system. They should have done that. And they could at the same time have crippled the possibility of Israeli air attacks by destroying all the air bases in Israel, making them unusable. And they could have destroyed a lot of the Israeli planes on the ground. Why they didn't do that, I will never understand.
There's some indescribable infrahuman who poses as defense minister of the genocidals, saying that Tehran will burn if this continues. So this is basically, you can interpret it in many ways, including the worst possible way. So it's no wonder that now we have members of the Majlis, the Iranian parliament, say we need a nuclear bomb. Yes, you do. Yesterday, you need a nuclear bomb. There's no other language that these genocidal maniacs understand. The only language they understand is power. So now we have undescribable toxic settlers in Tel Aviv crying and whining and posing as victims because there were hypersonic missiles landing in the center of Tel Aviv, which is something that should have happened many years ago. And it's no wonder that the Arab world, the Arab street, and the Islamic street in the lands of Islam is rejoicing. Finally, these genocidals are getting a taste of their own medicine. And obviously they're crying and whining because the only thing they know, the only reaction, and threatening apocalypse.
They're attacking me again because I'm holding them accountable and because I'm doing my job. I've spent my entire career.
So the doubts that many of us had in the first few hours when we saw that massive Israeli attack, they were more or less dispelled after the first stage of it's in fact technically is Operation Severe Punishment, right, Nima? It's not True Promise 3. And the fact that they managed to recompose the leadership, the military leadership, very, very fast, and they're active. And of course, the air defenses seem to be active as well, at least most part. So coming back to our first big point, it's a war of regime change, which has been specified in detail, including in the paper that everybody now is discovering, but it has been available for more than 50 years. It was published in 2009, the Brookings Institution report, which passed to Persia, which many of us have been analyzing for years. I started analyzing this in 2009 when I was with Asia Times. So regime change, infiltration inside, provoke the population against the regime by, for instance, via relentless bombing of different targets all across Iran. And what you just mentioned, Nima, what these idiots, I republished on my Telegram. Let's see if I ask. I'm not going to name names because these people don't even deserve to be named. But okay, here it is, I think. I just wrote Zionist neocons, which is the case. And it's not only one guy, it's several. They're spinning that Musk can provide the final nail in the coffin of the Iranian regime, their own terminology, by offering Starlink to the Iranian people, also their terminology, which cannot, between commas, organize a coup. This is the key phrase, organize a coup. It's all about a coup against the administration in Iran, against the Islamic Revolution, and to have a return of a puppet like the Shah before. These people cannot think about anything else. That's the problem. They are blocked in their own little vision, in their own mental block, you know. So it's all about regime change. And now that, as you mentioned correctly, there is unity among practically all strata of Iranian society after Iran is attacked directly, and you have civilian Iranian victims. So, you know, the blowback against this particular plan is immediate. But Iran will suffer. This war is going to be very, very painful. But all of us in the global south who are deeply implicated in changing the system of international relations, at least we can be heartened that Iran faced with two options: total capitulation or having their country totally destroyed. They chose the third option, resistance. And we're going to resist our way. And we won't let them do whatever they want to do with us. So this, from the point of view of a lesson to the global south, this is it. You are a sovereign nation. You're attacked by a bunch of genocidals linked with the empire. You have to resist if you have the means. Iran has the means to a certain extent. And we hope that in the background, if this thing goes on, which looks like it's going to go on, Russia and China will step in.
This was literally Iranian.
Okay, I'm going to stop it right there because our time is growing short. I recommend the rest of the video to everyone. Okay, it's a wonderful video. Pepe is wonderful. But since this video was put out, which was either this morning or last night, let me see. It was done 16 hours ago. Okay. So it was this morning I first encountered it, okay, I believe. But since this morning, there's more and more information about the Iranian attacks. And those attacks on Israel have been very successful. Pepe, at the time of the video, did not have access to the information about the attacks on Haifa, the oil refineries, and so he wasn't aware of how increasingly successful the Iranians have been. Okay, now I hear that what is going on right now is another raid by the Israelis, okay, another wave of planes. I don't know how successful that is going to be, but if Pepe is right and the air defenses are now intact, it will not be possible for the Israeli planes to do anything like the kind of damage they did on the first run.
Right, I heard just as Pepe did that everything's intact.
Yeah, everything's intact. Okay, the likelihood is that the Israeli planes won't even be able to get, into Iranian airspace with the air defense scheme still intact. Okay, now, earlier today, I think the Israeli planes, at least based on Israeli claims, were still over Tehran. But I suspect that by now that has been all shut down. But we will see. Okay, we will see. But as Scott Ritter had said, as time goes on, the Israeli attacks should be less and less effective. The Iranian attacks should be more and more effective. Time is now on the side of the Iranians. The only problem is if the Israeli attacks on the oil fields, on the gas fields, are more successful than they have been so far, then the Iranians may be brought to the point of shutting down the strait. And if they shut down the strait, then that will have a devastating effect on the world economy and all of us. I hope that they do not do that. I point out that it's not in the interest of the Chinese, in spite of the fact that they now have the railway operating, the new railway operating, shipping the oil to China. So to summarize this whole thing that's been going on here, the first Israeli attack appeared to be very successful, but it wasn't as successful as it first appeared. It didn't really get into the deep undergrounds of Iran. It had only little effect on the nuclear sites and very little effect on the missile sites. Apparently, looks like Scott Ritter's initial estimate that there was a degradation of the missile capability of Iran by 70%. That does not look true anymore. It looks like there's been little, if any, degradation of the missile capability, and it's looked like the Israelis are as the expression goes, taking it in the ear right now.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll have to see if that continues, or if the Israelis still have some rabbits that they can pull out of the attack, or if the United States decides, that they better go in on the side of the Israelis. But Trump and Putin have been in contact, and undoubtedly Putin has been has been delivering very sharp warnings to Trump, making it clear to him that uh, uh, the Russians are obligated by treaty at this point uh, uh, to support Iran, and that if Trump goes in to support Israel, there will be an obligation on the part of the Russians to go in support of Iran. Then the two nuclear powers will be in direct confrontation, and I'm sure Putin is making it clear to Trump that that's not what Trump wants.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's something that Trump actually fears considerably, and that it's a good bet that uh, he's going to play Taco Trump again, uh, and that uh, he's not going to go ahead with a direct intervention by the US military or U.S. troops with respect to Iran. I mean, maybe the most they'll do is a bombing campaign, but I don't think the bombing campaign is going to be very successful. And we still have a situation where if the United States does engage in a bombing campaign against Iran, then I think Iran is going to reply with attacks on the U.S. military bases in West Asia.
And they said they would do that.
And they said they would do that, and I think they will do that. And I think that's another reason why Trump is probably not going to take the final step of an air campaign against Iran, because he knows that's going to jeopardize the troops in West Asia. There are
Mm-hmm.
68 bases there surrounding Iran, and I think the Iranians will have enough missiles not only to saturate Israel, but to get rid of all those bases. So I think Trump is going to withdraw. In fact, I think he was quite stupid to go as far as he has gone in supporting this attack by the Israelis on the Iranians. It was a monumentally stupid thing to do.
It is. And what he gets bribed with, most of the disgust and the disgusting things he's done, the public are aware of it.
Some of the public are
Yeah, but
aware.
even his base will love him no matter what. They really don't care.
Well, okay, I don't think that's as true as it once was, because with respect to other issues, he has screwed around with his base,
Mm-hmm.
and quite a number of them are disillusioned now because of the effects of the tariffs. Because he failed to support, the members of his base with respect to federal support for disasters in their various areas. He hasn't responded to people who voted for him who've been subject to disasters.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's got to take away votes from his base and approval from his base. And, he can talk about the immigrants all he wants, and about all the problems with the immigrants. But if he fails to deliver concrete things to his base, okay, and again, the big and beautiful bill, that's going to cut the Medicaid support that so many of his base, are relying on. And they're not going to be able to tolerate that. And a lot of them are on food stamps also.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that hasn't hit them yet because the big, beautiful bill hasn't passed yet. But this idiot is doing everything he can to see that it passes.
But
So there are so many areas where he's screwing around, where he's losing support. We have to remember his polling support is now down to 38%.
Right. He's got the who is it? The libertarians are the ones that are really furious with him. An isolationist. He ran on being a peace president,
He ran on
and they're
peace
pissed. They're
president.
pissed at him. The only people that really like him are his Christian Zionists because they're into all of this, this nonsense.
Right, but even they are countervailed by the failure to support them in the disaster situations, and also the Medicaid problems and the SNAP problems that they're about to have. I mean, a lot of those evangelicals are poor people,
Yes.
and that's going to hit them, and they're going to be weakened in their support for him due to those economic factors. I mean, I think his polling could drop into the 20s. It all depends on what happens in the next 2 or 3 months. But anyway, but that may not happen because he may back off on various things.
He should.
Okay, as they say again, Trump always chickens out, and that may apply also to this thing. But if he's going to chicken out, he's got to take hold of Stephen Miller and kick him out of the administration.
Oh, he does. There's a lot that those insiders that he's got to kick out. They're feeding him so many, I don't know, so much misinformation for their own agendas.
I know that's awful. Even says this is based on a meme with the Lebanese resembling Weiss tourists overlooking bombing of Gaza from a safe distance. Yes. Lebanese sitting there with binoculars, sitting at the edge of their seats as onlookers at the border, clearly celebrating the Iranian onslaught on a common enemy. Pepe can belabor a point, isn't martyrdom rather than targeted assassination, a superior tenet of Iran's brand, of Islam. I suppose for those who are, extremely religious and motivated by that, okay, but for many of the regular people in Iran, I think they may find targeted assassination to be a better alternative, okay, including even the people in the hierarchy, who are parts of the IRGC. It seems to me they're very interested in hitting back, at the aggressors.
Oh, definitely. There's a huge support in Iran. So you look at how far this went back. Like when we were talking about that with True Promise 2, and when people were waiting for Iran to respond. I mean, the Iranian people were like, they wanted Iran to be tougher. So now they're out cheering, and they're happy that they don't want this. They don't want to end up like other countries did. They're like, come on, to their leadership has to do something, and they've got to be strong about it.
Yes, they've got to be stronger.
Yes.
Yes, and now I think they see them getting stronger, and they like that.
Yes, they don't want to be made fools out of.
Yes, they like that. Okay, so according to the indicator, we see that there are something like 160 people here now. It's just went up to 160. That was high for the night, and now it's gone down to 159. But in closing, because I think it's time to close, okay, I do want to say to all the folks who are here, please do come back. We are on Tuesdays and Fridays This stream has to break through to a new level. If it's possible to get 160 people here, it's possible to get 160 people here constantly. If you like this particular stream, what I'd like to point out to you is that most of the streams we do are as good as this one. We are careful in how we compose the streams, how we put together the various pieces to talk about and to discuss, okay, and to go through. And we go through these things very carefully. And our commentary is, I think, very carefully constructed. And we deliver information here that you won't find anywhere else. And of course, as one would expect to say, I think that we can deliver superior content continuously to you that you won't hear about anywhere else. So please do come back. I don't know if most of you are from Facebook or from Twitter or from YouTube. We do much better on Facebook and Twitter, usually much better on Twitter than we do on either Facebook or on YouTube. But please do come back, because we will always give you content that's as good, okay, as this. But don't you agree, Dee?
Yes, we do. We spend time looking and researching to get information to show a perspective that technically you're not going to see in a lot of media.
Yeah, I don't know, if you'll, see it anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, of course, the people we feature are the best people, in their fields.
Yes.
And we think the meta-analysis we do on top of these analysis, these analyses encompasses new insight that, of course, these very best people are not, themselves delivering in the nature of the case. So we think, in terms of the information we deliver, that it is at the top of the information food chain. And that's why we say, please come back. Okay. So thank you for that. I will be back again on Tuesday, and Dee will have some very good shows herself next week, probably at least on Monday night. And then again in the middle of the week. I'm sure she's going to have some very good shows for you on Around the World with Dee and Friends.
Yes, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time.
And please, if you are motivated, please do either make a contribution on patreon.com/Joe_Firestone, or please do buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Joe.Firestone. So, okay, Dee, would you like to give your coordinates to people for donations as well?
Yes, my donations can be reached at Cash App, Venmo, PayPal, and it's they're all Dolores Pierce, Dolores, and last name Pierce, Peers.
Right. So thank you, Dolores.
And thank you, Joe.
Okay.
And
here we have some confirmation, okay, from Evelina. The level is very consistent on this stream. It's excellent. Thank you, Evelina. We are pleased with that kind of validation. I also want to say, on most streams, my camera is not frozen as it was on this stream. I didn't want to interrupt anything to try to fix it, but it is rarely frozen. I don't know why it is tonight. I can't explain it. Maybe if I refresh the stream, I will try to reload it.
Okay, so Joe should be back momentarily as he's rebooting himself.
Okay, well, that would have worked. I see I am no longer frozen, but I didn't want to try to do it. So anyway, thank you very much. I see there are still 3 of you here. And I will end the stream now. So good night, Dee.
Good night, everyone. Good night, Bonnie.
Good night.
Good night, and free Palestine.
From the river to the sea, and everybody have a wonderful weekend.
Yes, you too. Good night.